Well, the Trump administration started out with lies about the size of the president's inauguration, and it's ending with lies about the pro-Trump riot in Washington, putting the reality-based news media in an awkward spot. Adam has more.
What happened in Washington Wednesday was tragic and totally straightforward. Egged on by the president, a pro-Trump mob ransacked the Capitol, derailing democracy and humiliating this country.
Hordes of Trump supporters breaching barricades, storming the Capitol.
Violent mobs stoked and encouraged by the words of President Trump and his allies.
These are his supporters.
The truth is simple, and most news organizations are reporting it, but some aren't.
Antifa-like tactics, we don't know if Antifa is out there.
We see serious indications that Antifa and outside infiltrators could be involved in all of this.
And it's not just fringy One American News and Newsmax pushing the idea that Trump and his backers aren't really to blame.
There's always bad actors that will infiltrate large crowds.
Lou, we did have some advance warning that there might be Antifa elements masquerading as Trump supporters.
Antifa insurrectionists possibly could have infiltrated some of these movements.
For the reality-based media, this creates a dilemma. Report on these alternative facts and you spread disinformation. Don't, and you miss a story with huge implications. One solution, front-load the truth, stressing that Trump and his supporters caused the violence before describing their attempts to blame somebody else.
Adam, you've taken a pretty strict approach to this. You don't even think the news media should be giving this the light of the day. They shouldn't even mention it, but they're getting the information elsewhere. So it's the duty, I believe, of the responsible news media to do it in some way. You've suggested maybe front-loading it. Here's what happened. Oh, by the way, other people think that. But keeping it under a lid isn't going to work.
Oh, I don't think there's any way that you can not mention the fact that the conservative media marketplace is pushing the idea that the people who did what they did on Wednesday actually weren't responsible, that it was someone else. That's a really important story that needs to be covered. I'm not so much worried about Fox and One American News and Newsmax. I think that they're sort of beyond repair at this point. What I am worried about is news organizations like our own, Emily, public radio stations, public TV stations, newspapers of record, legit websites moving forward. There's going to be a natural thirst for stories about how Trump supporters are coping when Joe Biden becomes president, whether they've changed their mind about the election. And there's going to be a million opportunities for us to get it wrong by putting a microphone in front of someone who says, yeah, I think the election was stolen, and not either prefacing that with the truth or confronting them then and there. And it's imperative, I think, that we're very mindful, to use an overused term, as we have these conversations, as we do this reporting, to make sure that we're not part of the problem ourselves.
Well, I agree with that. And I also think there are opportunities to deconstruct, some of this obviously false information that's being spewed out by people that don't want to recognize that, these were Trump supporters. First of all, let's just have a discussion about how outside agitators are a commonly used phrase when nobody wants to accept responsibility for the group. I mean, let's just have that discussion as a part of our journalism. Let's also talk about, wow, as far as I know about Antifa, they're not shy. I don't think they're like hiding in the group saying, hey, we just want to infiltrate and do our thing. We don't want you to know it's us. My understanding of the Antifa is they're out front about it if they want to be seen and heard and make their point. So right away, what are we talking about here? So I think there has to be a deconstruction. There has to be a lot of truth-telling over and over again. And I agree with Adam. You cannot let these statements just lie there without being challenged.
This is another really difficult problem for journalism. I saw the other day there was an analysis in the New York Times just very calmly reporting that, no, there's no evidence that Antifa had any involvement in this. We know this. This was nothing but a lie that was concocted on the spot to take the heat off the right-wing Trump supporters who rioted and tried to take over the Capitol the other day. And I don't know that kind of calm fact-checking is appropriate to the moment. On the other hand, we do need to know about this stuff, and it needs to be knocked down, as Adam suggested, right up front. And we can't go with, we've already had 4 years of reporters in diners reporting that Trump supporters support Trump. What we can't have now is 4 years of Trump supporters support Trump, and oh, by the way, they still believe the election was stolen.
You know, all you can do as a journalist, I think, is report facts and cite the evidence, and then point out the falsehoods when there is no evidence. I was really heartened by the Georgia Secretary of State when he presented the results and all the evidence of the election and lack of fraud there. I said, wow, this guy should be a journalist, an investigative journalist. The problem is that it's not going to change the minds of a mob. As Abraham Lincoln said, you can fool some of the people all the time. I truly don't know in a free society how you counter places like Newsmax when they bring on the My Pillow guy as their analyst to look into and suggest that Antifa is out there. I can only point to the ratings from that day and that night as a small ray of hope. Fox had the worst primetime ratings of any network except for CBS, and CNN had the highest ratings in their history that night. So perhaps there's some ray of hope in terms of where people are going for their primary source of information.
Adam, what are you going to do if people start putting those microphones in the year to come in front of all those Trump supporters? I mean,
I'll get on Twitter and rant and rave and then have a beer and go to bed. Yeah, I mean, I do think it's something that all of us who are in this industry need to continually be talking about as we have our daily planning meetings. We should be thinking this stuff through. We shouldn't just assume that the right thing to do is self-evident because not everyone may have pondered this stuff the way that we do on this show every week.